morning. I thought I'd go live and just kind of chit chat while I was painting. I am currently working on the giant Marvin helmet. I've been working on the Marvin costume basically all of 2020. It feels like. I think I maybe started in February. And with everything going on and with some personal health issues, I had to sort of stretch it out. But we're in the home stretch of this now. This is actually the second version of the Marvin helmet. The first one I made out of, I think, 3 or 5 millimeter craft foam, EVA foam, and that was way too thin. So this is a nice hefty 10 millimeter. As you can see, I've got some magnets on the inside, and I'm very excited. My first time working with magnet technology. So here is the broom. And that sits right in there. It's very exciting with the magnet on the underside. And then it's going to tip over if I leave it that way. And they're very strong magnets. I spent a good, 30 minutes, an hour trying to get some of them separated because I didn't put the plastic piece in it. And then we have the visor. Make sure I put it the right way. And that clips right to the outside, through the paint, through the foam. It's very exciting, and I'm very excited that it's all working out. Also, it'll be a lot easier to ship since this is going halfway across country when I'm done. And here is me for size reference. So it's a nice big helmet. It'll be very fun. I put papier-mâché on the helmet itself and then covered it in joint compound. And now I'm covering the joint compound in gesso so that I can paint it. I went ahead and did my first layer of paint already of gesso. It's looking pretty good. I'm excited. The broom has 2 layers of gesso now. So I think that will be a little more exciting than white paint on white paint. So we'll see how this house paint works on top of the gesso. I've got 2 colors for the broom. Got this yellow for the bristly part, and I've got this brown for the broom-ish part. I went and it had to be like March 19th was when I bought these paints of this year. So I wanted to match the colors exactly, so I went to the Home Depot and they matched the paint for me. They even matched that green for the helmet itself, which is very exciting. But it needs another layer of gesso, so we're not going to paint that right now. And my shop is a little bit of a mess just because I'm trying to get this done, so I'm not really being good about putting my things away. So don't tell my mom on me that I'm not cleaning up as I go. She'd be disappointed. There we go. Give me a nice clean foam brush. Look, I did good this time. I didn't put my hand over the camera. Also, paint for me is a full contact sport. I already have gesso on my pants and I've only been painting for half an hour. Oh no. There we go. So there is that nice yellow color. It's a little yellow lighting in my shop, but I'm excited. Let's see. pretty nice. Looks pretty good. You can see some of the brush strokes, but I think that I should be able to sand that out with a really fine sandpaper to make it nice and smooth. And with the brush part, at least, it's probably okay if there are brush strokes, since it's supposed to be representing a brush. I'm trying to make it as cartoony as possible, since we were not going for realism with this project, as you might have noticed by the giant helmet that's in frame. And this is definitely one of those projects where you can paint for a while and then let the paint dry and go to paint something else or work on something else. So once this is done, then all I have left to do, once the helmet's done, then I have to make some giant shoes. I'm trying to get it done by the end of the year so this doesn't become a full 12-month project. We'll see. Well, this looks so much better. So the first time I tried this with the thinner foam, I could not get the paint to look the way I wanted it to. It just didn't look good. So this is attempt number 2. And what I'm hoping is that with this gesso underneath it, since it's house paint and not acrylic paint, that should will hopefully give enough of a barrier between the foam and the paint that it will be a nice application. And it dries pretty fast, so that's nice. I did just get yellow on this helmet. Told you, full contact sport with me and painting. Luckily, we're gonna put another layer of gesso on top of that. And I've got like 4 bottles of gesso, so I'm not afraid to just slap that on there. Let's see how much paint I can get on things that I own. It's nice and chilly in Georgia this morning. I've had the space heater running since I got down here about an hour ago. And it's just now showing as 68 degrees here in my sewing studio in the basement. When I woke up this morning, it was 29 degrees, which the whole reason that I came south like a bird is to avoid the cold weather. I am very grateful that we are not in snowland right now. That is for sure. I did my snow time. I'm not a fan. It's fine to look at, but I don't want to deal. And I did not put any gesso on the inside of the brush. I am going to paint it, but it's going to be so much taller that the person I'm making this for is 5'10", so a good 8 inches taller than me. And the helmet sticks up a good 4 to 6 inches above that. So it'd be a very tall person to be able to see inside this brush. But I do like things to be complete, so I was actually just thinking I might paint the inside of the helmet after I've got it all painted on the outside, just to clean it up a little bit. that might be too much. We'll see. The other fun thing about this particular project is I've got LED panels that are already cut out in the shapes of eyes, of Marvin's eyes. And I got pieces of foam, and I thought I might use magnets for that, but I'm afraid that it might make dead spots in the LED panels. So I am covering the face plate with power mesh, which is a stretchy kind of substance, fabric. It's a fabric that they use like in swimsuits or in like skater costumes, where it looks like it's got like a deep neckline and you get an up close shot and it's sort of a nude color fabric. So I've got that in black, and I'm going to cover the face in that so it looks different from the helmet, and also so it should create an additional illusion of some of that darkness and lack of color that Marvin's face has. And then I should be able to like Velcro the eyes on top. That is my new current plan, as I've been working with these magnets. I haven't tested to see if it makes dead spots, but I assume that it's going to. And the idea was for the eyes to give him a couple of different expressions so they could be changed out. Because this person does a lot of cosplay charity. And so the idea of being able to go to like a hospital and not have angry Marvin, but maybe have happy Marvin, or, you know, something else. It did make giant hands, and that was a lot of fun. I think I just got yellow paint on my shirt. Amazing. I did not. Not yet. There's still time. I'm really excited the magnet thing is working because it's going to be easier to ship, and it's easier for me to store, and I can work on these individual pieces and then go back and put it all together. And so it's my first time really working with magnets. I used them once before in a costume I made, an airbender costume for a friend years ago, and used magnets for the clasp, but he didn't know it at the time, but they weren't the right kinds of magnets. So it ended up not being very strong, and it held his cape together okay, but he ended up safety pinning it because they weren't the right kind of magnets, so they didn't do what I had hoped that they would. So I kind of avoided magnets for a while after that because I just didn't know how to do the right kind of research. But broomhead. So I think we'll leave that to dry a little bit. Bonus with having the space heater running is that the paint dries a little bit faster. So and there's our handy visor. So we'll go ahead so this is one layer of gesso on heat treated EVA foam. So I did not put anything on the visor. I was afraid if I papier-mâchéed and put the joint compound on it, that it'd make it too heavy. And while the magnets are very strong, and I countersunk all of them, so they're nice and flat against it, I didn't want to take any additional unnecessary chances. So I am using the Liquitex Gesso, this one. It says it adds tooth. So for my first coat, I went long ways. I don't know if y'all can see those brush strokes. So this time I'm going to go up and down, and that should help eliminate some of the appearance of brush strokes as well. Usually I use spray paint. I usually use what is it? The Plastidip as my base, and it just wasn't smooth enough under the house paint. So I learned the house paint is not real forgiving when it comes to texture, and so I ended up having to, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to redo the whole thing. See, now I've got gesso on my pants again. So what I'm hoping is that by putting the gesso down first, since it's made to be used with paints, and the Plastidip isn't really, like, it works really well with acrylics or with thick spray paints. I've got a crown that I make that I use a really nice thick gold spray paint, and I use a black Plastidip underneath it, so the gold looks really metallic. It's your pro tip for color theory for the day, that it does actually make a difference what your base is. That for stuff like metallics, if you put a black underneath it, it's going to make it look so like a gold or a silver paint. That a black base coat will make the colors seem more metal-like, whereas a white base coat is going to make it brighter. So it really depends on what sort of effect you're going for as to what base color you'll want to use. So there's some painting color theory for you. Figure I'll do the big surface first, and then I'll do the edges when it's going to be a little bit harder to sort of control and that. There we go. Second layer of gesso, and definitely what I had in mind when I bought this microphone stand for drying paint projects. So let's see, that is still mostly wet. It's starting to dry out a little bit. Here is the faceplate right now. So I actually had it turned the other way, but the seams were really messy, and trying to create a little less work for myself, so flipped it right side out. And now the seams look really good. So I'm excited about that. And I should be done with my contact cement, which is also not great when you're a full contact crafter like I appear to be, that stuff gets everywhere. I had to use Glue Gun on my hands to get it off yesterday. So I'll go ahead. This thing is so big. I have the hardest time working around it. All right, I feel that's good enough. So here's our giant helmet with our magnets inside. And my other plan is to go ahead and use the magnets on the inside of the faceplate So then all of them will be in the same sort of line. And that should also help keep it nice and strong and together. So I'm just putting a second coat of gesso on here now and making it really, really thick. You can always sand it, and it's paint, so you can always just put more paint on it to a certain extent. The helmet is a little back heavy without anything on it, so put my little paint can right there. There we go. I saw a super sweet Twitter thread this morning. This person's grandfather turned 90. Their dad turned 90. And they wanted to do a photo shoot to go on social media. And even though the father doesn't use social media. And so it was this 90-year-old with his tiny dog. And it absolutely made my morning. And then the rest of the thread was other people sharing their dads and granddads with their tiny dogs. And seeing these 80 to 90-year-old men with these little, Bichon Frieses and poodles and stuff like that. Just the cutest way to start the day, honestly. Made me reminisce about my own grandfathers, who were not dogmen. But I think at least one of them would have gotten a kick out of social media. One of my grandfathers was an accountant and the other one was an artist. So guess which one probably would have liked social media more. Paint everywhere. I was a little concerned because I thought I let everything dry really good, but because it's in the basement, there's a little bit of waviness if you get real close. But I also have to remind myself that this is for cosplay and not like a movie where it's going to be super close up. So it doesn't have to be... doesn't have to look like it's factory made. Like, that's my goal, is to get it to look as nice as if you 3D printed it and all of that fancy stuff, but at the end of the day, it is still a handmade object, so. And we have what we call in my house the 6-foot rule, but if it looks good at 6 feet, it's good. Not everybody ascribes to this, but otherwise, I'd be working on the same project for multiple years just to get it perfect. And that is not something I really have time for, or really a desire to do. I'd get to a point where I just completely forgot there was a can of paint there. Or I wouldn't want to work on it anymore, You just get to a point where you're over it. But and I do like the sponge brushes with the gesso. It does still do brush streaks a little bit, but not nearly as bad as if it was a bristle brush. And they're pretty inexpensive. I like to keep them around just for whatever I decide I need to make. Look, there are days when you wake up and you just have to paint or you just have to sew. At least that's how I work. little divot back here. Let's see if I can fill it with gesso. So I found this very neat technique, that's better, with the papier-mâché, that putting joint compound on top of it to smooth out all the paper lines. And it was overall a success. There are a couple of spots that if I had the time, and if this wasn't version 2 already, that I might go back and try and redo. But I was really impressed. There was it's like the grandma of papier-mâché out there doing some really cool stuff. Clearly I have grandparents on the mind, if you couldn't tell. And if all else fails, and she wants to, you could take some of these little divots and turn it into battle damage, which is always a great solution. Still wet. Right. And I have a little bit of color variance, which is the other reason to do a second coat of gesso, because there was some places where the joint compound was a little bit thinner than other places. So I want to make sure that I've got a nice even base coverage, so I can give myself a little bit less work when I use the house paint. I will say, putting the gesso on thick definitely is helping with some of these divots and stuff too, which is nice. That's what I had hoped it would do. Yeah. Very exciting stuff. My sewing room is kind of a mess. We've also got, because I've been doing sanding in here and stuff, and so there's this white dust that's everywhere. And I was using the Dremel for the magnets, so there's dust from that too. Alright, I'll let this dry for a little while and then do the back side. There we go. Alright, let's see where we are on our broom. Still a little bit wet, but it is starting to dry pretty nicely. If y'all can see that, so we'll do a second layer of paint on that. And this is what happens when you don't use a base paint, a primer of some kind, whether it's the Plastidip or gesso or something else. That the and I did heat seal this, so the visor also got heat sealed. And you can see a little bit, those sort of tiny air bubbles in there. So this is going to need probably another layer or two of gesso as well. just to eliminate any of those tiny bubbles that we can. But it's definitely coming along. Very exciting stuff. So, since everything is drying right now, we will take a look at this guy. So, I will got my two eyes. There are this white color, and I was initially going to paint them black, but I have black foam, so I think I'm going to do that instead. So this is what I'm trying to go for, right? So, and here is the power mesh. So it comes in a couple of different colors. This is black, obviously, and it has a lot of stretch to it, but it's a very tight weave. So the plan is to take my headpiece here and put the power mesh on top of it. And now you can't even see the discoloration of the seams or anything like that. So, very excited that that is going to work. And I have my LED panels for the eyes. They look pink when they're off because they are a white color, but there are no batteries in there. I was going to show y'all, but there are no batteries. No, we should probably keep some batteries down here. But what will happen is that these will go on the front, and then we'll thread the wire through the foam and attach the battery pack to the inside of the faceplate. So it's all one thing. And then I'm going to put magnets on the edges here, so it'll pull it out. So when it all goes together, it should all stay and not move around. So that's the plan. Got a couple of false starts with this project, doing some things that I haven't done before. So many things. One of the things that I learned to do with this project was work with foam clay. Or work with foam clay better. And that was an interesting challenge for me, because I'm used to regular clay, but foam clay is not regular clay. So, yeah. So I've got these little craft things, and they are perfect to cut out our eye shapes. So, and we'll do that while paint is drying. Because I like to not waste time if I can help it. So I've got my silver Sharpie to draw on the black foam. So I'm going to take my templates basically that I did, and I'm taking my silver Sharpie and tracing an outline, and then when I cut it, I'll cut inside the line. It's definitely one of those things that you want to make sure you decide ahead of time whether you're cutting outside the line or inside the line, because it will change the shape and size of things if you do. All right, so there's my tracing, and take my I got my self-healing mat. So let me trace the other one first. I love a good stencil. No better way to ensure that you've got everything just the way you want it. There we go, that wasn't bad. So now I've got my 2 eyeballs. So I'm gonna take them on my self-healing mat and get my X-Acto blade here. This is definitely a must-have if you're working with foam or really any kind of crafting. I really like to have my X-Acto blade around. And so I'm gonna cut on the inside of the line, so when I cut it out, the silver outline will be the trash piece. There we go. See? Silver piece, silver lines on the trash. And then we have these little, I don't know, these little weird holes there. So I'm gonna cut, this time I'm gonna cut around the outside of the silver piece. Which seems weird because it was just a, you know, a single Sharpie stroke, but because of the width of the marker, I don't know. But it really is the perfect size exactly for what I needed. Here we go. Very exciting. And then take a look at our original piece. So we've got another situation where it's a thin line, which is the width of the Sharpie. And then we'll cut on the outside of the line. Yeah. So it will end up being the same as the white pieces, just in the black color, which is one less thing for me to paint, which I should have thought about, but you know. Sorry, that pesky left hand getting in the way there. Alright, let's see how we did. So this was our original, and this is our traced piece. Amazing, beautiful. All right, so that one's done, so I'll throw away one, and then we'll do the other one, and then I can throw away the other one, just to keep myself on track. I am all about the little details, so. Again, I'm gonna cut on the inside of the silver line for the outline. And when I first did this, I had a poster board pattern. And I'm pretty sure that I threw that away, but I did use, I think it was Eagle Ted as the base pattern for the helmet, and then scaled it up a lot and added the little flanges on the bottom. And then I used the, I think it was the R31. He's got a spherical pattern, and so I used part of that to make the face. Which, lucky for us, cartoon faces are circular. There you go. Now you've got two eyes. There are two eye coverings. I'm very excited about these. Well done, friend. Thank you. Okay. All right. So now let's see if our helmet is dry enough on the front that we can lay it on its front. Yes. Yes, yes. Ooh. Thank you so much for your help today. This is going to look awesome. Here we go. Cool. All right. So, my poor brush. It's so full of gesso, it's coming through the other side. And of course, the thicker the paint goes on, the longer it takes to dry. But that is okay. Yeah. It's very exciting. I've been doing a lot with fabric lately, and so being able to get back into more of a 3D medium that isn't always going to behave the way I think it will. I've gotten pretty good at making fabric do what I want. At least for the techniques that I know. I am excited. I've got a projector, and I'm going to be getting that set up this weekend so that I can project patterns onto my cutting table directly. So I don't have to, I buy a lot of patterns from sewing patterns and foam patterns from independent designers. So when you do that, you buy the pattern, and then you print out the 50 pages of it, and you tape it together. And by the time I'm done with that, I don't even want to make the thing anymore. So this way, I should be able to just buy the pattern and then project it onto my cutting surface and start making a piece of clothing or a piece of armor. And I am very, very excited about that. And I just realized yesterday that I could also use it for foam. So we were talking the other night about going back to conventions after it's safe to do so, and looking at the possibility of some socially distanced costumes, so that, because you go to Dragon Con every year, you get gone crud. That's everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people get sick because somebody has gone who is sick and they should have stayed home, but they didn't. And they have infected 50,000 of their closest friends. And even if you're practicing good hygiene and good, washing your hands and all that stuff, nobody was wearing masks. I mean, some of your cosplayers might have been, but it wasn't for any kind of safety reason. And so I'm not sure if I want to be back in a crowd next year and not have some of those measures in place. Now, I was wearing a mask last year for my allergies, which are really bad basically year-round. So, that part didn't bother me. But, so we were looking at maybe some large armor builds or something like that to give us the 6 feet to keep people away from us. So if we decide to go that route, it's something that, just like this, is going to probably take the better part, excuse me, of a year to do. All right. Oh, I'm so excited, y'all. So up here, I originally put a magnet in the helmet and then I didn't countersink it, and so it wasn't quite strong enough to hold which is amazing because these are so strong, these magnets are so strong, but it wasn't quite strong enough to go through that 10 millimeters of foam plus the papier-mâché and the paint. So I ended up, because I've got my other magnet at the bottom of the brush here, so I ended up having to sort of improvise so that I could still, so I didn't have to make a third helmet, which is really what I didn't want to do. Cool. All right. So that is good. This is good. Let's see about our visor. All right. We're going to do, well, just set my thumb in wet gesso because of course I did. So we're going to go for layer number 3 of gesso on the visor, and 2 layers of gesso should be good for the helmet because we already had that nice base from the joint compound. I just want to make sure that this is the best base it can be for the visor. So I'm going to go back the other direction. Make sure to use lots of paint to get that nice thick layer going. Also, that will help fill in some of the little holes that are probably only visible to me. The other thing was, the last time that I did this, I had the visor attached to the helmet, and so that made painting it very difficult. I like this a lot better. There we go, layer number 3, all done. Cool. All right, so now that we've done that, we've got our brush here. So there's the top, mostly dry. It's still a little bit wet. I'll let it dry completely before I do another layer of that. But the sides are nice and dry. So I'm going to do another coat of the yellow. That's no fun. This has been my struggle with this project too. trying to keep things from falling on me. So we'll see how this does. All right. We're going to do the same thing that we were doing on the visor and go the opposite direction. And always paint brush strokes in later. And I think I might. We'll see how I'm feeling. I mean, I need to do some sort of detail work on it. Here we go. So we'll let that get nice and dry, and then come back with a really fine sandpaper to sand out any of the brush strokes. And then we'll do the base in that dark brown color, and maybe do a mixture of the brown and the yellow to do some of the detail work on the brush. All right, well, I've got some other chores to do around the house this morning. So thank you for stopping by and hanging out with me while I painted things and watched paint dry with me. And I will see you all next time.